As someone who had a baby fairly recently, I found your descriptions of pregnancy, childbirth, motherhood to be so unbelievably visceral, and it is this universal experience among mothers to go through those kinds of things, but that we just don't talk about it. I'm really interested in your perspective on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think the matrophobia thing is so big and deep, and I even had it all through the writing of this book. Like, again, kind of as to your question, like, I was like, this is all fine to write down, but like, I won't publish this, like, I'll just write this all down. So I think, and it's shocking to me, given the matrophobic and kind of, misogynistic culture that we live in, that like a book like this is like, there's a lot of women who may like it, but that it's even gotten as far as it's gotten because the kind of the kind of tsunami of distaste is so powerful, and I think that the tsunami of distaste being so powerful is also met with this thing I've heard a lot, where people say like, well, it's just been done so many times before, and you're like, where? Where? Show me. Because when I was writing some of these things down, I thought, well, I'll go to my bookshelf and I'll read some other accounts of labor or whatever. And it was like, I was there for a long time, and I have not like the biggest library, but I have a fair amount of books, and I found, well, there were 2 books I could find that weren't fiction, or that weren't written by men about the experiences. So that was really, it sounds cliched in this kind of 70s feminist way to say that it's hidden, repressed knowledge, but I think clearly it really is, and I think that one of the great things about writing alone and not thinking about audience or the world is that, and if you have a just kind of almost just journalistic desire to get things down, then you just do that, and then I'll never forget the first time I presented from this book, and I read the part about the placenta being kind of like a raw steak or something. Just because you think like placenta, you're like, oh, whatever. Then you're like, oh my God, like what? That's a huge thing. And I think I call it like a bag of whale hearts or something. And the audience, the audible oh that went through the room was like, it was. It was very instructive, and it was kind of shocking, as I had never read any material from what I'd been working on before, and I was kind of very glad that I hadn't presented anything publicly, all along, because, I should have known, but I didn't know. But I think that given that paucity that was on my shelf, if for you or anybody else, there's like if there's one more thing on this shelf that is there, that seems to me like a very good thing. And I also think that it's very amazing to me. Now I'm just bitching, so forgive me. But like after this book was published, sometimes people would ask me like in interviews, like, do you feel like motherhood made your mind soft? And I'd be kind of like, well, we're here discussing this book, like written in the 2 years after. I just kind of was like, what do you think? Do you think so? Or like I'd reviews that say, obviously written at nap times. I'd be like it, it wasn't. Like I didn't go to the fragmented form because of nap time. Just like all these presumptions people make about what might happen to you, and the destruction from which you must, rise in order to utter an articulation again, and like now I'm just going off. But like the account of labor in here, I wrote, the day after I got home from the hospital, because I just thought it was just for me. I just thought I'll forget this if I don't write it down. So I just wrote it down. But when I told people that, they'd be like, you could write that? Like all sentences weren't lost to you the day after? I was like, I was just, there's a continuity of person, So I think all of those things have been very interesting just to hear. And I've learned a lot, as I'm sure you have. You learn a lot of things that you kind of already knew, but that you learn more of moving around with this kind of work. So.